This festive season, a lot of the packages that came to my house had the delivery branding on those e-commerce boxes. So, of all the new age companies, this is the one that fascinates me the most because with so much business, why is it that they're not turning profits yet? When they do and how they plan to find out that, I came down to their recently expanded facility in Bhiwandi and we'll have a conversation with the co-founder, CEO and MD, Sahil Barua. Let's go. Hey Sahil.
Hi Mangalam.
We're talking about a time when we've just come off the festive season, so to say. You had told the exchanges that, you did around 70 million parcels
Right.
in the express business in October itself. But towards the end of November, how does the third quarter look for you?
The third quarter is always usually the peak quarter for us in e-commerce, and what happens in this quarter is a lot of new people start shopping for the first time. And so in some senses, the Diwali and the festive season sets the benchmark for the next year. So like every year, we've seen pretty large offtake across categories. Overall, e-commerce has done well. So we've had a positive third quarter, and we think this sets a good sort of base for the next financial year as well.
So peak to peak, the GMV growth in the e-commerce industry was close to around 15% odd. You guys would have grown faster than that?
I think we've grown a little faster than that.
Perfect. Let's walk and talk.
Sure. These go up the belt, and it's completely automated in terms of it'll scan the box, it'll figure out exactly where this box is going to. We have a routing system which then decides what truck this goes to. And just like you have inbound docks here, you've got outbound docks on the other side. Now, the beauty of this facility is some of these boxes obviously will need manual handling. But for example, some of the smaller ones or the bags, if there's a truck waiting for them at the opposite end, it will just go straight through the automation, straight onto that truck which is waiting for them and ready to move out.
You still have majority of your business, over 60% coming in from express, another 18-20% coming in from part truckload. From the business verticals that you have, what is the margin difference between each, and do you see this mix changing at some point?
Yeah, look, if you look at it, part truckload 4 years back was practically 0% of our business. Today, it's already about 18% of our business by revenue. In terms of tonnage though, in terms of the weight that we carry, part truck actually today is nearly 65% of the overall tonnage that the network carries. So it's a larger business from a weight handle standpoint. The difference, of course, is express is more expensive. So which is why our revenues on the express side are larger than part truck. Going forward, our view is, of course, that while e-commerce and express will remain an important and very, very important part of our business, part truck and full truck and warehousing and supply chain are really where the broader opportunity in a country like India is. More manufacturing, more factories, more part truckload shipping, more full truckload shipping. So we're very bullish on the PTL business and it becoming larger. In terms of margins, given that we run a combined network, for us, both express and PTL margins will look very similar with time.
Which is in the broad range of?
As we get larger, our expectation, the typical LTL companies in India will make, EBITDA margins which are close to about, let's call it 15-16%. So that's sort of normative for PTL business. And our view on both of our businesses eventually is that given our efficiencies, we'll make more than that going forward.
And that brings me to the question, at what level do you get the efficiency? Because I was looking at your data over the last 5 years or so, the amount that you've invested, the cash flow from investment has been close to 8,000 odd crores. And of which nearly 80% has happened in just the last 2 years. So the question is, at what point does it translate into economies of scale, and when do you start enjoying positive margins?
Sure. See, I think if you, first of all, when you look at the overall cash that we've invested over the last 8 years, a significant portion of that has also been towards the acquisitions that we made, Spot On being one of them. Capital investments, of course, is the other, like this facility. In terms of the part truck business, I think our view is that we will continue to invest. Typically, our capex to revenue ratios right now are in sort of the 7% kind of range.
Yep.
Our view is that over the long term, this drops to about 4%. So it will take us about 3 or 4 years to get there. This, for instance, is sort of a high capex intensity project that we've done. We have one coming up in Bangalore next year. But after that, we're sort of well positioned in the 3 major cities, and that's when capex intensity overall starts dying down for our business. In terms of the margins, I think if you look at our parcel business, now we don't report split up profits overall across our business, but our parcel business has been at its target economics actually for quite some time. It's the LTL business where we've been investing over time to make sure we have these facilities to cater to growth. So I think it will take us some time. The important thing, or the way we look at it, is that the opportunity in India is so massive that to not invest at this point in time actually would be criminal failure. India needs these kinds of projects. It needs this kind of scale, this kind of investment in logistics, in trucking, for instance, which is another area that we're investing in. So we'll continue to invest for the near to mid-term.
But intuitively, then my mind goes out to a lot of the other players that are in this space itself. They are doing their capex, etc. as well. What is it that they've done differently for them to make the EBITDA margins that they are making, or what is it that you're front loading for you to forego those margin expansions? What is the difference there?
I think the difference is sort of what your investment horizon is. Typically in India, what's happened in the past is people have invested with a relatively narrow view in terms of growth, right? So if you look at even part truckload companies over the last 5-6 years, growth has been relatively slow. Part of the reason for that was regulatorily it was difficult for part truckload companies to grow without GST. But the second also is, at the end of the day, they found it difficult to shift share away from unorganized players towards organized players. Now our view is we're at this inflection point in the Indian economy. Unorganized is shifting towards organized players. You have better infrastructure. Better road infrastructure allows me to drive bigger trailers, right? Which is an area that Delhivery has been investing in. So I think in terms of how people have played this in the past, their mindset has been somewhat constrained by the realities of the market they were in. What we see is a growing economy, growing manufacturing base, a growing demand for our services, a move towards organized players. And so we've taken a longer view of the world and said, it's important for us to invest in these facilities. I guess that's the only difference. Eventually, if you look at it, some of our competitors have started buying these systems. So I suppose that in some sense validates what we're doing.
I was listening into your conference call post your second quarter earnings, and you said that the company that you're making right now will be the company that you're making for FY27. What exactly does delivery in FY27 look like when I look at the company's capabilities of parcel handling, revenue generation, margins, and say profits?
So I think the delivery of FY27 to begin with, our conservative estimates in the next 4 years is that we should be hopefully at least, several times the size that we are today from a revenue standpoint. On e-commerce, it's pretty simple. We've stated it, we believe the lowest cost network. We believe that we service every pin code in the country. So we will, at the bare minimum, maintain market share or grow market share in that segment. Now, it depends on how fast e-commerce grows. Long-term, people say 20%, 18%, whatever it is. I think delivery will grow that fast or faster. That's one. On the part truck side, I think the opportunity in India is massive. The industry is maybe, call it 5-6 billion in size. Globally, in every market around the world, the top 5 players form 60-70% of the market. India, the top 5 players form less than 10%. Right? So we'd like to be as a starting point, maybe 8-10% of the part truckload market in India, which is 600-700 million in revenue size. And then our other businesses are more ancillary businesses that kind of support or are value additions to our transportation business. So we don't set hard targets for them. So I'd say, we'll be a multiple of our current size, leaders in express, leaders in part truckload. That's our ambition. From a profitability standpoint, as I mentioned, we expect capex to tail off over the next year. So our margins will start looking more like our long-term margins, hopefully in 2 years or so.
All right, that sounds interesting. There is a lot to talk and there is a lot to see as well. So let's walk. Wow, so this looks like a toy factory where things are just sorting themselves out, going everywhere. These robotic. How automated are you versus everyone else in the industry?
I think people have different levels of automation. In terms of hardware, parcel sorters aren't new technology. Conveyor belts are not new technology per se. What separates us is the way this integrates with how we actually orchestrate the network. So it's the software automation and not just the hardware that makes a difference. For example, every package here, ultimately when it gets bagged, there's software which guides exactly where that bag will go, what truck it goes on to, the sequence in which it gets loaded. And that's where I believe, we're significantly different from other players in this industry. And the other, of course, is the fact that we don't follow a traditional hub and spoke model. So the magic's really not as much in the hardware, or not so much just in the physical automation, but also in the way the automation interacts with the software and how we make decisions.
So if you had to define your moat versus everyone else in the industry?
I think our moat is that we use technology to make complex logistics decisions better than most players in this industry. That is really our moat.
And you spoke about the market share in e-commerce. I remember the last time it was a little around 21-22 odd percent. That's about the entire industry. But in e-commerce, which is non-captive, what would your market share then be, given your low cost?
Based on the data that we have, our view is that in the non-captive segment, our market share will be anywhere from 40 to 50% overall. And when we look at it even at a customer level, typically customers give us anywhere from half of their shipping all the way up to there are customers who give us 100% of their shipping. So I'd say conservatively probably 45-50%.
45 to 50%. Does that make it lucrative for others to enter this business, or does it make it difficult for others to enter this business given that your market share is such?
Starting a logistics company is easy, right? I mean, if you have a bike, you're a logistics company. Scaling a logistics company and making a national network is hard. So I think it's difficult to compete with us because the economies of scale are baked in. And not just us, to be fair. Any logistics company, whether it's us or it's Blue Dart or whoever it is, the fact is we have economies of scale baked in from years of knowledge, investment in these facilities, in automation. We have cost advantages that are difficult to replicate if you're starting out or a small scale. So I think our 45% market share is not exactly attractive unless you have extremely deep pockets and a very long time horizon. I think it's not an easily competitive space.
So what would you say is your competition? Would it be large national logistics players because of the scale that they have and the reach that they have? Or would it be local players in specific geographies who may have cost advantages of that specific geography? How do you define that?
I think in India, there's no question. The big competition for all of us who are in the organized sector is the unorganized sector. It's a market where still 90% of logistics outside of parcel is done by unorganized players. And so the real competition is figuring out how to provide the same quality of service, the same personalized quality of service that many of them can, to all of our clients. It's in acquiring these clients, letting them know that we're there. So our real competition is not the other logistics companies in India, and we don't view them as such. We really view it as shifting share from unorganized to organized. That's where our competition is.
What are your views on acquisitions for now? Have everything that you acquired integrated well and you are putting a pause on acquisitions? Or are you still on the prowl with the 5,000 plus crore cash that you have on your books?
So acquisition for us is a choice in terms of two things. One is either it's a capability that we really want to sort of scale up ourselves. So as an example, we invested in a company called Algorithm, which extends our supply chain services suite. It provides inventory management software, for example, which is useful to our clients. Or Vinculum, where we own 10%, which enhances our direct-to-consumer value proposition. That's a capability acquisition. Those are typically small acquisitions. We will typically try to take, ideally we'll take a majority stake or less if we feel it's, good for us. Or there's something like Falcon, which is the system that you see here is done by this company called Falcon Autotech, with a majority shareholder. That's because this is a strategic capability for the future, right? This is core to how we do business, and so we will, back this company and make the acquisition. A spot-on-like acquisition is one which gives us scale in a new business line. So Part Truckload, Delivery and Spot-on getting together has effectively, from our position, tripled our volumes, compared to where we were 2 years ago. So we'll continue to look for acquisitions in these categories, but we're relatively selective. I don't know whether there are, let's put it this way, I don't know whether we're going to be very aggressively acquisitive over the next year or so, but if the right opportunities come along in any of these buckets, we keep looking at them and we'll make some of them. I think our focus will really be on tech capabilities, hardware, and in some cases, if we find the right scale acquisition opportunity, then we'll look at it.